Good evening, guys, and welcome to the Dovetails and Dados Wood Shop. And I think this evening we're going to get started on Get Kids Woodworking Episode 4. It's springtime. The boys and I have experienced several nests of birds' nests around the house this spring. And so I thought I'd start out simple with a little birdhouse. I was lucky enough to acquire a bunch of cedar fence cutoffs from a coworker, and I thought, well, what a great opportunity to put those to use and build a birdhouse, something that we will enjoy around the house for several years to come. So, where to start? First thing we need to do is make sure we have a square edge on one board or on our boards. You can do this with a joiner, you can do it with a hand plane, whatever you want to use. For that matter, you can cut a straight line and then mark off and make sure you have a second square side. Not a big deal. Once you get one edge squared up, it makes the whole process easier. I've already ran over these with the hand plane, so we are ready to start squaring them up and getting them used for the birdhouse. First thing we want to do is come up with a couple of sides. Birdhouses are very, very forgiving when it comes to woodworking. You can pretty much create them whatever size you want. The key to keep in mind are the size of the opening. You want something that's an inch and a half or smaller. If you get much bigger than that, you start getting into the less desirable birds that will inhabit the birdhouse. So, on that note, once you have one edge square, you can take a couple pieces and make your front and back to the birdhouse. So you want to make sure you have two boards that are the same size for the front and back. Easiest way to do that is to take a pocket knife, which I hope everybody has, and strike your line. On this cedar, you can strike the line quite deep, which really helps you out when it comes time to sawing off the edge square, the end square. If you're not real comfortable with the hand saw, it just helps give you a place to get started. Gives you a little channel to set your saw in and get the cut going. I decided to use the new Veritas saw. You don't have to have a saw that's nice to do this, obviously. Regular old hand saw works just fine. So anyways, we'll get the cut started. Again, having that little channel makes it much easier to get the saw going and in place. Alright, once we have a couple of pieces cut to the same length, we are ready to cut our peaks. Birdhouse, you want to give it a little bit of an angle so that rain will not fill your birdhouse and ruin your bird's day. For this, there are several things we can do. My favorite thing to do is just to take a sliding bevel gauge, set to whatever angle you want it to be. It doesn't have to be fancy or any certain number, just as long as it provides an angle. As you can tell, we're here. We have our bevel gauge at an angle, and we will mark off our angle. Flip it over and mark the other side. And once you have your angles done, you just cut those off. Again, you can use a handsaw, you can use your table saw with a miter gauge if you're lucky enough to have one. You could use a miter saw, a power miter saw if you have one of those. On this kind of stuff, I find that you don't have to be so accurate that it's annoying, and you can just cut it with a handsaw and be close enough 90% of the time. Obviously, on a finer piece of furniture, you're going to want to be more accurate, and you'll probably want to clean these joints up with planes and stuff like that. But for what we're doing, just make sure you get an angle cut. Alright, once you have one of your angles cut, you just flip the board over, put it back on clamp it back to your workspace. As you can tell, I don't have a big fancy bench with vices, but for most of the work I do, a simple table with a couple of F-clamps works just fine. Alright, now we have the face or the back side of the birdhouse cut. That's the angle I went with. Who knows what it is? Not sure. Don't really care. We will transfer these marks to our second board. Again, here you don't have to measure anything. I don't have a tape measure that I'm using on this project because it doesn't matter. Just go with what you got. Mark those. Again, you can make sure you're marking that nice and deep. You'll also notice I don't have a big fancy marking gauge. I use my pocket knife. Seems to work alright for this kind of stuff. Alright, now that we have both pieces cut, we should have two pretty close to identical pieces. Again, they don't have to be perfect. If you're within a 32nd of an inch, it's good enough. Now, the next line of business that I like to go ahead and take care of is to mark out our hole. Now, I could come over here and grab my Forstner bit set that has, I don't know, anywhere from a 1/4 of an inch Forstner bit to 2-inch Forstner bits. If you're not fortunate enough to have one of those or don't have one handy, you don't have to have a Forstner bit. You don't have to have a drill bit, because I don't think there's anybody who ever said that a birdhouse had to have a round hole in it. Again, what I kind of like to do is take my bevel gauge at the same angle that the roof line was on, and you can just mark out a line, go in one direction, then the other direction, And we're going to create this birdhouse with a off-centered, an off-centered square hole, because it just doesn't matter. You can just create a diamond that creates the opening. Once you've done that, it's very simple, and cedar especially, to start chiseling this out and chisel out the diamond. I'm not sure where my mallet went, so I will find it. Alright, got my mallet. With 3 boys, it's hard telling where things are in my shop. Go ahead and clamp that to the table. It's much easier to work on a piece with a chisel if you got it clamped in place. And we will take our chisel, pound down on the line just a little bit, not much. Do all 4 sides. And then what we'll do is we will come in, bevel down, make sure our stock stays in place. And start chiseling out the material. Is it the fastest way of doing it? Absolutely not. Is it the easiest way of doing it? No. But it is the least expensive way of doing it. Okay, so after about, 5 minutes of chiseling, we have a diamond. Off center, but who cares? Birds won't care, as long as it gives them a nice place to call home. So, we have our front and our back. Now we need to focus on doing some sides. The sides are quite simple. We need to cut a piece. The easiest way to figure out how tall or how long to make your side pieces is just to set your face up there with the board underneath it, and put your marking knife up in the corner where the lowest edge of the roof line is, and mark it. Then you can take your combination square or a carpenter square, whatever, and mark that board off. And you know that both of them are going to be the same. So once you get one cut, you can cut the other one to the same length, and you'll be on your way for sides. Then we'll be about ready for some assembly. Alright guys, I'm just about ready to finish up cutting my second side here, and then we'll get to some assembly. The cedar's still pretty wet, so it's got some it's got a lot of moisture in it, which we can deal with. Alright, for some assembly, the fun part, where it all starts coming together. And we will nail it into place. The trick here is just to make sure you get plenty of structural fasteners in the birdhouse. Once the cedar starts aging and moving around, you'll be thankful to have more fasteners than you think you probably need to start with. And this is one of those things that once you get the first couple in place, it starts going a whole lot quicker. this is the point of the build where I believe kids get the aha moment, as I would call it, and they say, hey, we're really building something. This is what it's all about. Now, on one side, I am going to leave, I'm only going to put 2 screws in, or excuse me, 2 nails in that side. And that is so you can get into the house and clean it. A lot of the commercial birdhouses you see don't allow for easy clean out. And that's not good, because if you get a sparrow, for instance, will fill the whole cavity with a nest, and I hate to say it, but do we really want to see more sparrows? I don't. They all look the same. There's not many. They're not very colorful. So I prefer to clean my nest out if a sparrow starts nesting in it. I need to put 1 more nail in this. There we have it. This will hinge down to allow for easy cleaning. We just need to put a roof on it and a floor. The roof is quite simple. We will cut 1 piece to go here and nail it in place. I may just use that piece right there. Make sure I have another piece that's the same size before I hammer it in place. I do. Alright, so we will nail this one in place. Just line it up however you want. Now, you will have to make a little bit of a decision here. If you are planning on mounting this to a fence, you'll want to mount it so that you can, like a fence post, you'll want to put the roof line flush on the back so that it'll mount up flush to it. If you're wanting to hang it, you can leave a little overhang on both edges like this, which I think that's what I'm going to do with this one. I have plenty of fastened bird houses, so I think I'm going to do this. This is where it's nice to have a helper, because they can help hold everything together for you. Unfortunately, all the boys are in bed. Now, once you have, one little trick I've learned is once you have secured one edge of the house on, or the roof on, it's much easier to use a straight edge to figure out where you need to continue driving nails. Just make a little indentation there, and you should hit the front or back of the house without any problem. It's a little more reliable than just eyeballing it. However, I think that once you've done this enough, several times, you can probably eyeball it and be just fine. Go to put your second side on. I like to put one nail up in the top so that it hits the other roof board. Like that. One of the other options you can do to make a house that's very easy to clean out is you can make a hinged roof. I don't have a problem with that. I've done several of them like that. However, I have learned that, me being short, it's nice to be able to open the side and see how many eggs are in the nest and what kind of eggs they are. It just makes it a little easier to observe what you got going on in the birdhouse. I've also learned that these little basic cedar projects are great for kids because the wood's not hard. It's easy for them to pound a nail in. It may take them a few more hits than it would you or I, but in the end, they create the piece, which is always helpful and always enjoyable for them. So, I'm going to put one more nail in this peak. There we go. And you have the basics of a house. Now, the only other thing we need to do is cut a bottom. Alright, so I cut me a little piece of wood for the bottom, and I'm just nailing it in. I made a major foobar on the assembling the birdhouse. I always hinge the one side for the clean out. I always hinge it at the top, and for some reason, while I was shooting this video, I decided it would be a good idea to hinge it at the bottom to the point where then I could not get it open because of the roof. So I had to go back and fix that. I'll admit it. Rookie mistake. And that's the beauty of woodworking or many hobbies, is you learn by making mistakes. I think kids in life, people in life, learn by making mistakes. I tell my sons all the time, it's perfectly okay to make a mistake as long as you learn from it and don't make the same mistake repeatedly. For some reason, I think they're struggling with that. But let's be honest, I think everybody in life struggles with that at some point or another. Alright. Two more nails and this one's done. And I just so happened to nail right into a knot. That's always fun. Simple birdhouse that any kid can build with a little bit of adult supervision. In grand total, it took me about 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes. Some of that is obviously trying to video it, and I had the one error. So yeah, do not hinge it at the bottom, or else you will not be able to get it open. By doing it on the top, you can get into the nest, see what's going on, and makes it easy to clean out. There you have it. It's done, ready to be hung, and thank you for watching. Hopefully you'll join us back here next time.